Dr. Berry, welcome to my show today. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
I've been an advocate of your way of eating since well, put it this way, I'm almost 70. And when I first got into uh, bodybuilding back in the early 1970s, while I was in high school, my trainer, my coach, put me on a low carb diet when I was preparing for a show. My first show, I was 17 years of age. This is what people in my sport did, that what we call get cut up for competition, was to eat low carb, because when you eat low carb, your insulin levels drop and your body burns fat or ketones for energy. And
I,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yes, that's exactly right.
But what we didn't talk much about was the health benefits of eating like this. And it wasn't until the 1990s I had been off the diet for a short period of time, because I followed the approach of Mike Mentzer. I don't know if you know who he is. He was a Mr. Universe. He was a proponent of a low calorie, low intake of food, but a lot of carbohydrates. And I ended up getting disseminated valley fever and was diagnosed with that in about 1991. And disseminated valley fever is the kind of valley fever you do not want to get, because only 3 to 5% of people get valley fever get this kind. And it's usually fatal in most cases. In fact, the Mr. America from 1977 died from it. And when I was diagnosed with it, and the doctor told me that it can move to the organs, the brain, the prostate, anywhere in the body, I had mine in my bone, in my collarbone, and I probably would die from it. Told me about an 18-year-old female who was diagnosed with disseminated valley fever, and she died within 2 weeks. And so I left his office really confused, because I thought I was on the perfect health food store diet. Low carbohydrate, I'm sorry, high carbohydrate, low fat, high dense nutrient intake from eating things like potatoes and whole grain and things like this. And I ended up getting the worst kind of valley fever you can get, disseminated. And I wasn't prepared to die. I had young kids at that time. And so I went back into my textbook, started reading and researching. And I said, you know what? This is a mold, a fungus. And I'm its petri dish. I'm feeding it from the carbohydrate intake I was taking in, because I had moisture, I had heat, and now I had food. So their solution for this problem was to put me on powerful antifungal drugs. Of course, I followed the doctor's suggestion for a couple of years, changed my carbohydrate intake, dropped it really low. And within a couple of years, I was off the medications, kept going back to the infectious disease doctor. And after a couple of years of getting, I know you know what a titer is, a Coxy titer, kept coming back 1 to 2, 1 to 4, stable, non-detectable. And after 2 years, he says, man, your titer's been coming back great for the last couple of years. The drugs must be working really well. I says, Doc, I haven't been on the drugs. He freaked
Right.
out. He says, if you need another doctor, I said, no, calm down, calm down. I need you just in case. They said, what have you been doing? I said, I cut my carbs way down. This is how I exercise. I use a PHA system, which is a form of circuit training, but much more intense. And he says to me, he says, you know what? That makes sense. That's the kind of diet we put a person on with candida. Then he told me that he had an HIV patient who followed the same diet and got off the drugs. So it made me a believer in this way of eating. And I've seen the same type of changes in so many people over the years, since the 90s, who followed the low carb keto approach. It's been incredible, but unfortunately, the medical community hasn't embraced it, and now it's starting to happen. And with your starting of the American Diabetic Society, that's a step forward. Take a society that's loaded with people that have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetics, and finally give them the truth how they can reverse some of the sickness that they've created from the standard American diet. Welcome to the show. Tell us more about your society, and then let's talk more about your lies my doctors told me.
Sure. So I love your story that you just told, because it's absolutely true that if you're eating a diet high enough in carbohydrates, and for those who don't study nutrition like I do and you do, carbohydrates, they all turn into sugar.
Right.
Some turn into sugar much quicker, but they all eventually turn into sugar. Bacteria and funguses love sugar. They love that. And so you had to be exposed to the microbe in order to catch the valley fever. But also, it's important that your terrain was compromised. Your body was compromised by eating this high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And more and more emerging research is coming out showing that indeed, if you have high blood sugar all the time, if you have metabolic syndrome, if you have high insulin levels all the time, you're much more susceptible to infection from bacteria, fungus, and viruses. And indeed, we see when we look at the research from the recent pandemic, the people that died were almost exclusively overweight, diabetic, metabolic syndrome, and elderly. That's who died. And that the reason that they were so susceptible to this is because their immune system was weakened by the diet that they were eating that gave them the prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, obesity to start with. And so I've actually reached out to the American Diabetes Association multiple times because there's volumes of research about a low carb diet with regards to people with diabetes. And so we can talk about all the other benefits of a low carb or a ketogenic diet or even a carnivore diet. But especially if someone has prediabetes or type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, they are going to benefit immensely from eating a very low carbohydrate diet. In fact, for people with type 2 diabetes, they can reverse it completely, get rid of it, not have to take any medication at all. If they're on a low carb enough diet, consistently enough for long enough, they'll reverse it and go back to not having diabetes at all. Same goes for prediabetes. People with type 1 diabetes can reverse their type 1s back to the point where they have a normal A1C, normal blood sugars, and they're injecting 80 to 90% less insulin on a daily basis. You can't cure the type 1 with a low carb diet, but you can effectively put it into a remission where you only have to use 10% of the insulin that you used to use. And so I reached out multiple times to the American Diabetes Association with questions like, why are you not recommending a low carb diet, at least, if not a ketogenic diet, to everyone with diabetes? You would save them, each individual patient would save thousands of dollars a year in copays and in paying for their drugs, and they would have such a drastic decrease in diabetic complications like blindness, impotence, kidney failure, heart disease, stroke, all these things. The risk of that would plummet if they had normal blood sugar, normal A1C. And they wouldn't need all these medications. Why don't you promote that? I don't understand. And received zero response from them. They were not interested at all in talking to me. I like you said, I've got 3 million subscribers on my YouTube channel. Each of my YouTube videos typically gets at least 50,000 views, if not more. And you go to the American Diabetes Association website or YouTube channel, their videos get 400 or 500 views. So why would they not want to come on to my channel? I don't understand that. They had an open invitation, and they not only didn't refuse, they just didn't reply at all. And so a group of low carb MDs and PhDs, we got together and said, I don't think they're interested. And, there are people who are more conspiratorial minded who say, yeah, dude, they've got $100 million annual budget. Mm-hmm. They get millions of dollars from the big food companies that make the high carb food. And they get millions of dollars from the big pharmaceutical companies who make the diabetes medications. If they started recommending a low carb ketogenic diet to people with diabetes, they would lose tens of millions of dollars a year in donations from these people. They have no interest in that. And I said, well, that's not really helping people with diabetes at all, is it? Why don't we start our own society and actually give people with diabetes good nutrition advice? And everybody was immediately excited about that. And of course, it's a big undertaking, taking on a Goliath the size of the ADA. But I'm not really afraid of them, because I think anybody with diabetes, once they hear our message and they say, oh, I tried this ADS method, and my A1C dropped 4 or 5 points, and I was able to come off 3 or 4 different diabetes medications, I think they'll be a believer for life. I don't think they'll ever forget about that.
Okay, we have to put
And
you on
so,
hold, okay? We have to take a break right now, okay? Hold that thought for me, because we've seen the same results of people we work with that have diabetes, got them off insulin, all that stuff. Stay right there, okay?
Yeah.
We'll be right back. You listen to Good Life with Lancer, Dr. Fitness. My guest today is Dr. Ken Berry. We're talking about how you can change your life around with good common sense nutrition and exercise. We'll be right back. Dr. Berry, welcome back to the show. I know you were talking about the American Diabetic Society, and you're putting this together. And what you're saying is exactly what I've been saying for so many years on this radio station. You want to make money? Create a market for your goods. Okay, Big Pharma has done it, okay, in cahoots with the food companies. Create a diet that Americans eat, that get sick on and fat on. We'll make the drugs to treat it. We'll all get rich.
That's exactly right. And I've had many individuals with diabetes reach out to me after they completely reversed their type 2 diabetes. And they would say things like, I really think the ADA, I don't think they work for people with diabetes. I think they work for big food and big pharma. And initially I'm like, no, I don't think that's true. I think they're just maybe very cautious or maybe trying to take their time. But after thousands and thousands of people have reversed their type 2 diabetes, hundreds of type 1 diabetics have a normal A1C now, eating low carb or keto. They're all tweeting about this on X. They're all sharing this on Facebook. Mm-hmm. They would comment on the American Diabetes Association's YouTube videos, but for some reason the ADA has turned the comments off on their YouTube videos.
Oh, really?
You can't comment on their videos.
Really?
Yeah, that's odd, right? You would think they would want to encourage discussion and answer people's questions on their YouTube channel, but they don't seem to be interested in that. They just want to make a little video spouting the party line and then not give anybody a chance to comment on it. It's quite odd.
Well, they don't want the truth to get out there. That's the problem. Because voices
it
like
sure
yours
feels like that, and I hate to even accuse them of that, but it sure feels like that. I've got some of my YouTube videos have 15,000 comments on them. Why would I turn off the conversation with the viewers I'm trying to help? Why would I ever do that? I would never do that. Why do they do that? I'm not sure. Somebody should ask them.
Did you realize that some of them, your TV station, television stations like Fox, the board of directors go from one station to another to go from Fox to CNN? They make sure they run the drug commercials on both those stations.
Yeah, the average news company, about 60 to 80% of their revenue comes from pharmaceutical ads. God. And so you probably won't see any news reports about the American Diabetes Society on the local news, because if they promoted it too heavily, they would lose 60% of their ad revenue from the big pharmaceutical houses. They're not interested in that. They'd have to lay people off.
So how do people get involved with your organization? How do they do this? I'd like to be more involved if I could.
So currently we're setting up the nonprofit 501c3. That's almost completed. We do have a GoFundMe right now. We've raised about $95,000 just from regular folks who have used my advice to reverse or improve their the chronic disease or to lessen chronic disease, diabetes. And as soon as we have the nonprofit, as soon as it's official, we've got several big donors who are going to really donate some serious money, who are not big food manufacturers and big pharmaceutical manufacturers. In fact, it's in our bylaws of the ADS that we will never accept a check from a big food manufacturer or a big pharma manufacturer. We don't want their money because we know it comes with strings attached, and we're not interested in that. We're interested in people with diabetes getting as healthy as is possible for each one of them. And so we're working on a website. We're working on having social media presence on all the major social media platforms. And you'll start to see this stuff trickle out over the next few weeks. And then when we get some of the bigger donations that we're expecting, when the donation can be tax deductible, we're going to really start to blast out the truth to everybody around the world with any form of diabetes.
Cool. Now, tell us about your book, Lies My Doctor Told Me.
I actually have 3 books. Lies My Doctor Told Me was the first book I wrote. The second book might be of interest to some of your listeners. It's called Kicking Ass After 50. And it's you see it all the time. Men and women after the age of 50, they think they're old, think they're washed up, can't build muscle, can't get fit. absolutely not true. And so me and my good friend Zane Griggs, who's a fitness trainer, got together and wrote this book for people over the age of 50. If you're over 50, you're not dead. This literally could be the best. This could be the best half of your life, literally. But you got to know what to do, and you got to apply the simple principles.
Yes.
And then I also have a book called Common Sense Labs, because very often when you go to the doctor, they won't even order the most important labs. You have to ask them for the labs.
I know.
And so most people don't know what to ask for. That's what Common Sense Labs tell you. It tells you not only which labs to ask for, but it tells you why you want them. It even gives you the ICD-10 codes that'll help your doctor so that you can actually get your insurance to pay for the lab.
Oh, really?
And so many people have said that book helped them so much because they were able to actually get the labs they need to monitor their health properly. So lies my doctor told me, it's about 27 different lies that your doctor tells you. And a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't have called it lies. You should have called it myths or misconceptions. And here's why I chose that word. I know the word lie is inflammatory, but I meant it to be. Because if your hairdresser, Lance, tells you, you should eat a high-carb, low-fat diet, well, she's just your hairdresser. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just making conversation. But if a licensed health professional, like a doctor or a dietitian, they're supposed to know what they're talking about. It's kind of in the job description, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And if they're giving you medical and nutrition misinformation, that's more than just them misspeaking. It's their fiduciary duty to their patient to know what the hell they're talking about, isn't it? Yeah, that makes it a lie, in my opinion. Where I come from in Tennessee, that'd be called a big fat lie. If the mechanic said, oh, you need a new engine and a new transmission, and it turns out all you needed was your oil change, he didn't misspeak. He lied. And that's exactly, I apply that same metric to doctors and dietitians. It's their duty to know better.
Okay.
And if they don't know better, that's not the patient's fault, but it is the patient who will suffer.
Okay, let's talk about the power of the statin drug and cholesterol, the cholesterol myth.
You mean the power to make billions
Yeah,
of dollars?
you got that right.
Drug companies.
And all the side effects from that drug.
So first of all, the question should be, is having elevated cholesterol actually bad for you? Is having elevated LDL cholesterol, is that actually bad for you? And when people start to realize that most of the research about cholesterol was actually designed and funded and performed by the pharmaceutical companies themselves, people are like, wait a minute, because everybody knows, common sense, human nature is what it is. If you can tweak the study just a little bit this way or that way, and it turns out showing the result you want it to show, you're going to do that. That's human nature. We would all do that, right? There are hundreds of millions or billions of dollars at stake here. Let's tweak this study just a little bit. And so I think that's what happened. I think that they've tweaked the studies in multiple different ways. They've tweaked the arguments. They've tweaked the discussion so that the way the discussion is set up, it's just self-evident that high cholesterol is bad for you. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's true at all. And then secondly, this class of drugs they came up with has a long list of very common side effects and also a list of quite concerning, much more serious side effects. And the drug companies will try to say, oh, it's very rare for anybody to have a complication or a side effect. Well, it's actually, the truth is that these drugs can actually cause you to develop diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
And there are many, many studies that show that the rate of diabetes goes up if you're on a statin drug. They can cause muscle pain. They can actually cause muscle damage in rare cases. The coenzyme Q10 is something that's very important in the human body. It goes down as you get older in most people. Guess what else makes it go down? And keep in mind, coenzyme Q10 does hundreds of very important things in the human body. If you take a statin drug, you deplete your coenzyme Q10 levels. There are so many. I could go on for an hour and a half, Lance.
Yeah, that can lead to heart failure too. And of course, we have an epidemic of heart failure now too in America. Plus dementia, Alzheimer's, all cognitive problems because statin drugs cross the blood-brain barrier. Does all kinds of stuff. We're going to put you on hold again, okay, Doc?
Okay.
Stay right there. You listen to Good Life with Lance for Dr. Fitness. My guest today is Dr. Ken Berry. We'll be right back. Dr. Berry, welcome back to the show. Now, we're talking about statin drugs and how much money they made off that. Let's go to Ozempic now. how much money they're making off of the so-called weight loss drugs that are diabetes medications.
Yeah, the GLP-1 inhibitor drugs are going to make the drug companies billions of dollars, and I'm gonna make a prediction today on your show. Within the next 3 to 5 years, at least one of the GLP-1 inhibitors, either Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro, at least one, if not more, will be pulled from the market, and there will be huge class action lawsuits against the drug manufacturer. And for your average listener, if they get sued, it's terrible. It would wreck their life if they got sued, because normal people don't want to be sued, but big corporations like this, they expect to be sued. They've already sat down with the bean counters and the accountants and the attorneys, and they said, okay, how many side effects are we going to have? What's the average settlement going to be? They'll be happy to settle a lawsuit for $500 or $600 million because they've made $9 or $10 billion.
Yeah.
That's just the cost of doing business for them. They could care less about your actual health. They just want to turn out making that huge profit. And so I predict very bad things. And if any of your listeners are considering Ozempic or Wegovy, I would highly, highly recommend that you watch a few of my YouTube videos for free, adopt a very low carbohydrate diet. You're going to get the same benefits without all the side effects.
Right.
You also won't have to be part of that class action lawsuit that's coming in a few years.
Right. Do you figure about 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, 3 to 5 years. And because here's the problem, there's been no long-term study on these drugs at this current higher dosage. The people who are taking the drug right now, they are the experiment. They are the lab rats. This has never been done at this dosage level for a long period of time. Nobody has any idea what the outcome is going to be. The experiment is going on right now by the innocent people who are being duped into taking these drugs. That's the experiment.
Well, one of the top reasons why people are visiting emergency rooms now is overdosing on Ozempic or these types of medications. And they overdose. And I tell, how do you overdose on a medication to take the dose unless it stops working for you? You figure if you take more, it's going to work better. That's what's happening.
Sure.
It comes to a standstill. Okay, they're not losing anymore because they're not eating the correct way. And all of a sudden their weight loss stops and you say, I take more of this drug. And now they end up in emergency rooms with all the nasty side effects of these medications. All they got to do is change their diet, change their lifestyle, approach food differently, and move their bodies around. That's all they've got to do. But Big Pharma, they don't care because they're making billions and billions of dollars on this medication. And they're going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Okay, and like you said, they don't mind settling for $500 million when they make billions on it. They don't care because they don't care about people.
That's just the cost of doing business for a big corporation.
Absolutely.
They could care less. And the part that my job is to help dispel the magic. People out there, they want a magic pill. You know this.
Yeah.
You can remember back in the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, there was always some new magic pill. That's not a new thing. That's been going on for decades. People want to believe, oh, man, I can just take this pill or take this injection and then I can eat whatever I want and everything will be fine. That has never worked. It will never work. These new drugs are no exception. They're just the next iteration of that old magic pill. Guys used to go around from town to town back in the 1800s selling magic pills, and people fell for it then. They still fall for it now. I hope your listeners are smart enough not to fall for the latest magic pill.
Well, people are desperate because they want to lose weight. Sure. They won't stick on a diet, and if they can take a medication to do it for them, this is what they're going to do. They'll pay anything for that, anything. So Big Pharma really hooked on this one really good because the American population, literally, we have about 80 to 85% of our population is either overweight or obese. They've got a massive market that they're making big bucks on, and we're making our country sick, and it's running the cost of our health care up because when they end up in hospital with sicknesses caused from taking these medications, you and I are paying for it in insurance costs. That's why the rates keep going up.
And one of the main problems that confuses the average person is that they've tried to diet and exercise before, and it didn't work because they were trying to just calorie control on a high-carb diet. They were trying to portion control. They were trying to be in a calorie deficit. The only way that a human being can lose weight sustainably and keep it off on a portion control, high-carb diet is if you lock them in a cage, just like animals.
Yep.
They're not gonna restrict their food. If they're hungry, they're gonna eat. Humans are the same way. The beauty of a ketogenic or a ketovore or a carnivore diet is that you get to eat as much food as you want. You get to eat until you're comfortably stuffed. That's what everybody wants to do, right? But most people don't realize if I'll just stop eating these things and I'll eat these things instead, I can eat until I'm comfortably full. I don't have to stop eating while I'm still hungry. But if you're eating a high-carb diet, a low-fat diet, you absolutely have to stop eating while you're still hungry. You have to basically semi-starve yourself for the rest of your life. And nobody's capable of that. It's not even a question of willpower or self-control. No animal on the planet can starve itself forever. That doesn't even adhere to the principles of basic biology. All animals are going to eat until they're full, including human beings. But they don't know that there's a dietary option out there where they can eat until they're full. Ketogenic is that option. Ketovore is that option. Carnivore is that option. When you eat enough healthy animal fat and animal protein, you will be full, and you will stay full for many, many hours. That'll help you stop the snacking, which is also a problem. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the weight starts to come off, the blood sugar starts to come down, the insulin goes back down to normal, and you reverse your diabetes or your prediabetes. You reverse your metabolic syndrome. You lower your blood pressure back down to normal levels without medication. People don't know that that's even an option, and that's why I kept yelling at the American Diabetes Association saying, hey, you guys need to promote this. It would save people thousands of dollars and add years to their health span and their lifespan. But they don't seem interested at all. Therefore, now we have the American Diabetes Society that's going to tell people with diabetes the truth.
Now, we know on a low-carb diet you can consume a whole lot more calories, too, a whole lot more.
Sure.
And we know that because they're metabolized differently than carbohydrates. And we know that when your blood sugar goes up, so does your appetite, because carbohydrates are addictive. It works on the pleasure center in the brain. They've actually experimented with animals, particularly mice or rats, and they put them on a high-carb diet and withdrew the carbohydrates, and their teeth would chatter and they would shake like they were coming off a drug, because they're highly addictive. So, of course, the food companies got together with Big Pharma, and got together and came up with an idea how we can get people addicted to food, and then we can make the drugs that fit them.
Absolutely. So, you've got it. That's $1 billion idea. You should start a drug company or a food company. You'd make $1 billion, but I feel like your ethics may prevent you from doing that.
Well, I know when I had my valley fever, the drug alone cost over $700 a month. And here in Arizona, valley fever is a big thing. Okay, I mean, we're looking at an epidemic out here, all right, because every year we have the dust storms, people breathe in the spores, and valley fever is through the roof, all right? And so in my case, changing my diet got me off expensive medications and got me healthy again. But they're not going to tell people out here, you need to go on a low-carb ketogenic diet if you've got valley fever, to try to help your body get back to normal so the immune system functions. They're not going to do that because they make a lot of money off those antifungal drugs.
Yeah, the pharmaceutical houses do. But here's the thing. The average doctor in Arizona they don't even realize that if you went on a very low carbohydrate diet, it would help your body fight the valley fever. They don't even know that because they listen to organizations like the ADA. They don't have an official organization like the ADS saying, hey, you need to put these people on a very low carb diet. It would help their body fight off the infection. Doctors just don't know better. It is their job to know better, Lance, but they don't know better. So even though it's their fault, it turns out being the patient's problem.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give 10 copies of your book to people who come and enroll with us. Now, you have a YouTube channel. Okay, what is the YouTube channel that they can go to?
If you just go to YouTube and search for Dr. Berry, you'll find me.
All right, Dr. Berry, I appreciate your time with us today. I know you've got kids back there. I can hear them in the background. Go enjoy your weekend with them, all right?
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.